and appreciate all your communications and updates as we've been enduring the challenges before us. Okay, next is Deputy Superintendent Angie Stallings, ready to weigh in. The next item under 5.1 is waiver of board rules. And before we get into that, this is probably the beginning. There's probably going to be more that has to happen because a lot of things are tied to certain things, and I appreciate the proactive approach that staff at USBE and then also some board members are bringing up concerns. This is just the beginning, and so what I'm asking is Deputy Superintendent Angie Stallings to just give some quick background, and then I'm going to introduce a motion before the board, and it's quite lengthy, and then we'll go from there. So it is a time for questions and that, so we'll do that after Deputy Superintendent Angie Stallings does her briefing and her report. So are you ready, Angie?
I am, thank you. Okay. Good morning, board members. Just as background, I was asked to prepare a draft motion for the board to use today. We had all of our USBE staff weigh in and provide feedback on it and try to identify board rule provisions that our LEAs and others would be interested in having waived during this time period. So if you look on your backup, you'll see a PDF that is titled Motion to Waive Board Rule Provisions Due to COVID-19. I will just quickly summarize and highlight the board rules that are included in there. So you'll see the introductory language that in light of the national and state declarations of state of emergency due to the COVID pandemic, that through June 30, 2020, the State Board of Education grants to LEAs a statewide waiver of. So the first one is the 180 school day and 990 hour requirement in R277419.4. This allows schools the time they need to adjust and waives those requirements. The second, we've received some questions from LEAs about their school calendar, if they wanted to change things such as spring break, moving that forward or back, and this would allow them to amend those calendars as needed. Next, the transportation requirements in R277600. Currently, there are some requirements to support or to submit costs, including miles and minutes, and our staff will be working with LEAs on how that might be prorated or changed somewhat for the period of the soft closures, dismissals, or closures. And then the next one, number 4, is the April 1 deadline in R277407. This is our school fees rule. Currently, there's a requirement for fee schedules and policies to be approved by April 1. And so that would allow LEAs to continue to do that later after the schools reconvene. And then items 5 through 10 are all simply deadlines that are included in board rules that hit in April and May. And so we are waiving those requirements for the April 1, April 30, whatever that deadline is for those programs. And then you'll see after number 10 that the waivers are conditioned on the following 3 conditions. 1, that the LEA follows state and local health official orders and timelines for dismissal, soft closure, or complete closure of schools. 2, that the LEA implements the LEA's school closure continuity of education plan, which may not be inconsistent with the health department directives and for which the LEA has available personnel and funds. And then last, the LEA provides as much notice and communication to students and parents of the suspension and reconvening of school services, including meal services, as soon as reasonably possible and in languages spoken by families within the LEA where applicable. And the last portion there, you'll see that we would recommend that the board direct staff to continue to distribute funding, state funding, to LEAs and other entities that receive funding directly from USBE through June 30, 2020. And that's all I have, unless there are questions or share if you would like me to do anything else.
Okay. Board Member Belknap.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions, but if you want to stop me, you can. My first one would be on number 3, the transportation in 600. The question I have, are we just worrying about our rule, or do we have some federal rules we need to try and work with, or statute?
That is a good question, Angie, again. I am not aware of any federal requirements that need to be waived, and the board, of course, would not have the authority to waive that. But if Scott Jones or others are aware of any waivers we're seeking from the federal government related to transportation, I have not heard that come up. It's simply about our state funding as far as I'm aware right now.
All right, okay. So number 2, Chair, would be, it's on number 4. If we're going to change April 1 for the fees needs to be in, we need to change and move anything when our monitoring starts. Do we need to also include that?
Currently, and I don't know if that was a question for Chair Huntsman, but just as a reminder, the monitoring will start, but no corrective action is currently set to take place until the 21-22 school year. So that's still very, we're still about 1.5 years away before any corrective action would be taking place.
Okay, and then if I could just weigh it, and this is Chair Huntsman, any modifications or amendments to any of this or additional waivers as we are going through discovery and finding out, oh, we've got to deal with this one or that one, or make requests at the federal side.
Yeah.
I'm later on my agenda, I want to talk about the frequency of our future meetings, and I'm sure those will be on our agenda as we go through discovery. The whole intent of all of this is to do our very best to be in compliance and do what's right and best for kids. So there's going to be more opportunities for our board moving forward to address potential waivers. So we have a couple other questions. Board Member Belknap, did that you had a couple? Is that your couple?
I just had one more, and I'm sorry, I had 3 in a row, but I think it's easier. And it's actually at the end, the direction that districts will continue to receive their funding because let's see. So this will just be on a continual basis as it has been previous to the COVID-19, yes?
Yes. And the answer is yes. I'm sure there might be some snags on some requests or whatever, but the whole intent is to continue that, to continue the funding as usual. So
Chair?
let's go to board member
Chair
Hanson.
Never mind.
Board member Hanson, did you have a question?
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of questions, if I may. First, I understand the need to provide some relief to the LEAs, certainly with the situation that we're facing. I'm wondering about pushing dates out, say a blanket push out of dates by 2 months rather than waiving things entirely. We do still have people working. There are things that can be accomplished. I would be more comfortable with pushing dates out, and I'd like to hear Angie's comment on that. Maybe instead of the April, everything gets pushed out 2 months, so April 1 dates become June 1, April 30th becomes June 30th. That's my first question. I do have a couple of other ones.
I don't see a problem with that. If you would like us to change those dates so that would essentially apply to number 4 on, I believe. Let me look at the motion again. I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties in here. Can you all still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what I could do is I could change the motion and just amend it from number 4 on to show that the deadlines move 2 months forward. I'd be happy to do that if that's what the board would like.
Okay, so you don't see any problem with that necessarily. I know we'd have to come back and revisit, but I'd still like to have some date that people are working toward.
There is one that could be a problem, board member Hanson, which is, let me look really quickly. It's number 6, the requirement that requires for a school to administer a 3rd benchmark reading assessment. That is one that we may want to move up and just postpone. And then all of the others, I think we could move to 2 months.
Okay, I had that one X'd out on my copy as well. I don't think that we can just move that out 2 months. Next question would be on the payments. Am I to understand that we're going to pay for expenses not incurred? I mean, I know we have people still working in salaries, but for example, with transportation, nobody's buying any fuel. There's no maintenance other than some, yearly preventive maintenance maybe that should be done on those vehicles. I think there are other areas like that where we have expenses that normally would be reimbursed that aren't being incurred. And I'm wondering what the thought is there. I'd be more comfortable with reimbursing actuals, but not necessarily paying for things that aren't being spent.
So this is Mark Hanson. I think yeah, there's good intentions there, but it's about priorities and what you're really going to have people monitor, and to start singling out and trying to pick individual programs that there might be a potential savings on. I think it's going to be program. We're going to have a lot of challenges with administering that moving forward. There's a lot of very innovative and creative things that people are even doing on the transportation side with buses, besides just hauling students. Providing Wi-Fi, and we haven't changed statutes or rules, and so this whole method, the purpose of these waivers is to allow flexibility at the local level so that they know they have that revenue stream coming in and that they can still take care of business, not knowing exactly from week to week what that business is going to be doing. And you put yourself in the position of a local board / business administrator, and without the waiver of these rules, it puts them into a position, and without that flexibility of trying to manage the LEA that's in crisis mode to the point of what can or can't I do with this specific individual or this bus, or how do I pay for this fuel? And so the intent here is strictly lift those strict rules and regulations to the end of this fiscal year, which I'm not sure exactly what is going to be happening there. So I don't know if it would best serve our board to start picking different things out or trying to put modifications in that's going to create more burden for our local for our LEAs in managing this. But I do see that potential there, but on the accountability side. So I hope I'm speaking well to what I think should happen. But let's go to board member Lear. Or did you have more?
First,
Hanson, board member Hanson, you had a couple. I think I'm just going to limit it to a couple, no more than two, because we have more on here. So board member Hanson, I wasn't keeping track.
Yeah.
More than
back on number one with the 180-day and 990-hour requirement, I understand also that some kind of waiver there would be unnecessary, but I'd certainly be more comfortable if we had an LEA plan that they submitted to us and then they perform according to their plan. We need to ensure that we're making education happen here and not just waiving all the requirements and hoping that things happen. I think there needs to be some incentive to do that. So that's my final comment, I guess, and I'll listen and then weigh back in.
Chair, may I make two clarifications? This is Angie Stallings to answer board member Hanson's questions. Number one, on the transportation item, you'll notice that at the end of number 3, it does say as described by USBE staff, and that provides staff some discretion and flexibility to clarify how that waiver will apply. And I think that some of the issues you raised about whether we reimburse for gas costs, for example, when no gas is actually being bought, would be something that USBE staff could then clarify what that waiver entails and what they will be reimbursing for or not. So there is a little bit of discretion there to provide some more detail moving forward. The second thing I just wanted to bring to your attention is if you look at the conditions at the bottom, the 3 conditions, the second condition is that the LEA implements the LEA's school closure continuity of education plan. And that assumes that LEAs will be providing some sort of continuing instructional supports for their students. And we have provisions, and I will put a hyperlink in there. Currently on the board's website, there's a web page related to the coronavirus, and you can see the elements of what we're asking LEAs to provide as part of that school closure continuity of education plan on our web page. And so I hopefully that helps. And then board member Lear would also like to make some comments.
Well, she was next on this. Board member Lear.
Right. I had two comments. One, that I'm expecting that there's communication with the board and the legislature so that the requirements of the food chain that relate to the requirements that Angie just itemized would also be honored by the legislature, so that we will be able to not have problems in providing information. And secondly, and that's more of a rhetorical comment, if you know something different, that'd be great to let me know. The second comment is I'm assuming this is not retroactive, so that we won't have frustration in trying to resolve previous problems because of this situation, that still we can rely on the rules that were in place, the timelines that were in place in making decisions today and going forward for things that took place before these crucial times. Thanks.
So, Superintendent Dixon wants to weigh in.
As to your first comment, Board Member Larry, I should have stated that earlier, and I apologize. So yesterday on our COVID task force call, we actually have Speaker Wilson and President Adams who serve on that call. Lieutenant Governor Cox is the chair, as you're aware. And I brought up these issues and that we would be asking the board for waivers, and they were supportive of that and recognized and acknowledged that there are things that they will have to do to support us within their law, the statutes that they created by making amendments, etc. But they were supportive of certainly the board's role in amending our own rules and then asking for amendments for theirs where needed.
Thanks.
Board member Earl.
Yes, thank you. I guess my question had to do with the continuity of education plan, which I hadn't seen before until right now. So I just went over it real quick, which is a real basic plan, which I know we probably need to keep it that way, but I'm wondering if it provides enough accountability or not. I don't know. I haven't seen any of these from districts, so I can't speak to them other than this actual form that's listed. So I just had questions that way. What exactly did that entail, and how will it help families and educators? So,
Angie, do you want to
Yes.
weigh in on anything there?
Yes, and what we can do, I've been updating the motion based on some of the feedback that I will send to Lorraine. If you go on to our website, and I'm not sure if somebody could show our website, share their screen, but if you want to follow along with me, if you open to the Utah State Board of Education's webpage, and then on the banner at the top, click Coronavirus Resources. And then if you go to School Closure Guidance, the tab, and then scroll down a little bit, you'll see a link to the School Closure Continuity of Education Plan. And it shows there that it includes the following items: the names of schools within the LEA. Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed your question, so you probably saw that. What could I answer specifically? I apologize.
no, you're good. I just that was my question, is where is that at? And I found it in the meantime. But I guess my thought is this school will turn this in, or LEA will turn this in?
The LEA.
Each school so there'll be one from an LEA?
Correct. That is my understanding. The LEA would provide the plan and list all of the schools within the LEA as part of their plan.
Okay, so each school will, okay.
It's LEA.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you.
okay. So, Angie, what is it that you're looking at from our draft motion that we've already previously created? What are you working on?
So I have, the question is, I can update the motion to split out the waivers as board member Hanson requested and bring in, just make the deadlines go back 2 months. So I can send that to Lorraine right now if she can show it, or who could I send it to show?
Send it to Sarah Young, please.
Okay, I'm gonna send it right now.
And to Miss Lorraine.
Okay. And
Chair, it's Carol. I had one more comment if others don't
Okay.
have comments.
Board member there.
The other question I had, this might be directed to Dr. Dixon. I've heard from a number of mostly smaller charter schools that they're not getting her updates. Is there something, do you have a suggestion for something? I've already told them they need to immediately send their contact information to the superintendent's office. Is there anything else that you can suggest so that all LEAs are getting your regular updates?
Yeah, I send everything to the LEA head listserv. So all LEAs are in there, and maybe it's the wrong person. If they're expecting daily updates, I'm certainly not giving those. I don't have a time certain when I'm sending a, just every few days as something arises. I think had maybe 2 schools who have reached out to me and said that the names they've given me an update, and I have forwarded those. I know that Mark Peterson put in a ticket that has been closed. So I think there were 3 names that needed to be changed that we've had so far. So yeah, just have them send me the names and we'll get that fixed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And they can always text, call, or email. I've been answering a lot of individual questions as well.
Thank you.
And I sent that updated waiver to Sarah and Lorraine.
Motion to amend. We don't have a motion.
We don't even have a motion on the table. I want to see what that looks like once we. Board member Earl.
Mark, you gonna make a motion?
Yeah, but I'm wanting to see it here I haven't seen it yet with the proposed change to some of those deadlines. So, board member Earl, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Just make sure. I'm waiting to see it pop up as revised.
Did Lorraine receive it? Sarah has not received it yet.
No, I haven't either.
Okay, and Miss Lorraine hasn't received it.
Would you like me to come down?
No,
Studio?
no, but I'm going to read it. So I
Yeah.
think this would be the appropriate thing to do with this proposed change. So I guess the best way for me to start this would be, or for us to do this is, I'll state this: I'm seeking a motion to waive board rule provisions due to COVID-19. And I move that in light of the national and state declarations of.
Someone you can't vote for yourself.
Well, I'm seeking a motion to. So I'm seeking a motion that in light of the national and state declaration of state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that through June 30th, 2020, the State Board of Education grants to local education agencies, or LEAs, a statewide waiver of, first, the 180 school day and 990 hour requirement of R277-419-4. Number 2, the requirement that a school calendar be approved in an open meeting as described as in R277-419-46. Number 3, the transportation requirement of R277-600, which requires an LEA to record and submit all student transportation costs, including meals and minutes as described by USBE staff. And number 4, the requirement in R277-406-3-1 for a school to administer a third benchmark reading assessment sometime between April and June 15th. That the following deadlines be pushed. No, I'm not done. This is only the beginning.
I'll keep going.
Okay, that the following deadlines be pushed back by 2 months. Number 1, the April 1 deadline in R277-407-6, which includes an LEA governing board to annually adopt a fee schedule and fee policies for the LEA in a regular scheduled public meeting by April 1st. Number 2, the April 30th deadline in R277-400-4, which requires a school to designate an emergency preparedness/emergency response week each year before April 30th. Number 3, the requirement in R277-419-57 that requires LEAs to apply by April 1st for CTE courses for the upcoming year. Number 4, the April 1 deadline in R277-459-3E for a teacher to commit to spend the teacher's allocations of supplies and material funding. Number 5, the April 1st deadline in R277-477-3-5 for a charter school to approve with the charter school's governing board, the school's trust land plan. And number 6, the April 1st deadline in R277-720-3-1 for an LEA to apply for a competency-based education designation. That the waivers be based on the following conditions. Number 1, the LEA follows state and local health official orders and timeliness for dismissal, soft closures, or complete closure of schools. Number 2, the LEA implements the LEA's school closure continuity of education plan, which may not be inconsistent with health department directives and for which the LEA has available personnel and funds. And number 3, the LEA provides as much notice and communication to students and parents for the suspension and reconvening of school services, including meals service, and as soon as is reasonably possible and in language spoken by families within the LEA where applicable. And that the board directs staff to continue to distribute state funding to LEAs and other entities that receiving funding directly from USBE through June 30th, 2020. That concludes the motion that I'm seeking. So I'm after a so moved.
Second, so moved.
Okay,
Who's that?
who did the so moved?
Board Member Nielsen.
Thank you. And second was
Board
Give a
Member
second.
Bolter. Second.
Board Member Bolter. We have a motion and a second. Discussion to that motion. Board Member Belknap.
Yes, Chair, I have a question on the school trust fund plans on your motion and why it's only directed to charters and it doesn't include other traditional LEAs also to have that opportunity to push them out.
Okay. Angie, Deputy Superintendent Angie Stallings, can you speak to that?
Yes, just a moment. I was going to look to see why, that's a good question, and I wonder if it was inadvertent. If you give me a moment, I will look to see what the district's school's deadline is and make sure that we shouldn't add that one. You're right. That should be included as well. I can add that if you'd like to make that amendment, Board Member Belknap.
So without objection?
Without objection, can we add that now? I will also speak to, as more things are creeping up, this is just kind of the beginning of that. So that would, without objection, that would be under that number 5, the April 1st deadline in R277-4777-3, 5, it would say for districts and charter schools to approve. Without objection, I'll include that in that motion recommendation. That Board Member Nielsen, are you okay with that motion? Or
Yes, sir.
that motion? Board Member Bolter, are you good on the second?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, any further discussion? Board Member Scott Hanson?
Just a question, as far as compliance with the following conditions at the bottom of this motion, are there any LEAs that we know of right now that would not be in compliance?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So we have this, the waivers are conditional based on the 3 conditions at the bottom. At this stage, are we aware of any LEAs who are not in compliance with those 3 conditions?
Angie is not. I don't know if Superintendent Dixon or anybody else is aware.
And I've asked those same questions, and I know that Dr. Dixon's been asked, are we not doing what we intended to do here? And I don't know of any LEAs that are presently in non-compliance, but I can't guarantee or assure they're in full compliance.
How are we going to handle that issue? And we did have one district that closed up earlier than the others. I don't know if they're in compliance or if they received the proper direction to do that.
Yeah, and so this motion would come in effect after that closure. So I can't speak to that. But then I also understand that particular district supposedly did have contact with the health members of the health department, and then there were some conflicts of who in that health department, but I don't have full knowledge of all that conversation. That would just be part of the compliance piece.
Okay, maybe I can just ask how we're going to put that into effect, those compliance issues. Who's going to monitor that? And do we have a plan to decide how the funds get distributed, how we check those boxes so that funds can be distributed?
And we can ask how they're going to do it, but this is a motion that was actually, as we put this together, had staff's fingerprints on it that are required to be in that compliance piece, to have that compliance piece.
Could Angie or someone else, Superintendent, can you help me understand what direction we take?
Can the superintendent or deputy superintendent Scott Jones weigh in on this?
Hey, this is Scott. Hey, Board Member Hanson, can you tell me, can you repeat your question, please? You're concerned about the distribution of the funds, or?
So we've made the waivers conditional based on 3 conditions, and I'm wondering how we ensure that the LEAs are meeting those conditions prior to receiving the benefit of the waivers or the funding.
Right. So number 1 is the LEA follows state and local health official orders and timelines for dismissal, soft closure, or complete closure of schools. So I can attest right now that they're doing that. We're under the soft closure aspect of it. We've messaged time and time again that they need to follow the official orders and timelines for dismissal. It seems that they're doing that. So to address or answer number one, it'll be a continual process of monitoring how they respond based on the situation that changes on the ground, as we know, almost every minute or almost every day now. So then we get reports back from the LEAs, on what they're doing, as the superintendent articulated. Can someone put that back up again so I can see the three things again, so I can address this question? Sarah, can you I can't see it now.
Well, Sarah's bringing that up. I just want to comment. My last communication with Terry Shoemaker, who's USBA and lead on the superintendent, asking how all of this is playing out, and he was not aware of any non-compliance.
Right. So with number two, with the second one, the LEAs. Okay, I'll wait until it stops moving. Can you go down a little bit further, or scroll up a little bit further, Sarah? Back to the three of them. Yeah. No. For the second one, I still can't see it. Okay, right. The LEAs implement school closure continuity of education plan, which may not be inconsistent with the directive. So it ties into number one. We'll make sure that we can see their continuity of education plan. We won't approve or deny those. Those are local level school closure continuities and education plan. But we can, make sure that each one of them has one. For the third one, they provide as much notice and communication to students and parents of the suspension and reconvening of school services, including meal services. We're able to, but with our communications team and everyone else here, we're able to track and monitor this third one and all three of them, sure. So distribution should occur, and we shouldn't have any issues with being able to monitor, see responses of the local entities or LEAs on any one of these three aspects of this motion. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. I think the simple answer would just be that if that's in your wheelhouse, Superintendent Jones, that we, that's fine. As long as somebody has responsibility for checking those things and making sure they're compliant, then that answers my question.
Well, Board Member Hanson, no, it's not singularly in my wheelhouse. All of us here as one team will monitor all three of those together. So, and then, if we feel that there's exceptions or that LEAs aren't following the 3 points of that, we'll address those on a case by case, one each basis, sir.
Okay.
I'm going to go down to this.
Superintendent Dixon. Is she on?
Her hands up.
I don't think your microphone's working. I'm gonna go to Board Member Davis.
Thank you. I was wondering if somebody could explain the difference between a dismissal and a soft closure, and if there's no difference, why they are delineated out differently in the amendment.
Chair Huntsman, can you hear me? This is
Yes.
okay. Sorry.
Dr. Dixon.
Yeah, my mic just still isn't working.
Did you hear?
I did.
The question? Okay, thank you.
I did. So it's a good, it's actually a good item to talk about the terminology. When we were first looking through terms, we used dismissal because some states were defining a closure, meaning the doors closed, no instruction goes on, whereas a dismissal still allowed for funding to flow, for instruction to take place. We wanted to be really clear that we weren't saying shut the doors and no instruction is taking place. The governor and his team used the word soft closure, which has been used in some states. And then there are other states who are using the term closure and they're still providing instruction and funding. So it's just a term of art. Dismissal and soft closure are really interchangeable in terms of the way we're using them. And Governor Herbert explained that when we had the initial press conference. If I may, Chair Huntsman, just add one other item. I think we have to be mindful with the school continuity plans that we need flexibility. We don't want them sending in a scrapbook or anything that's really cumbersome. And the feedback that we're getting is that they like the outline. Lea Voorhees has been sending great information out about continuity of services for students with disabilities. If you go to our website that Sarah Young brought up earlier, you'll see all sorts of resources. We're seeing amazing things being pushed out to schools and families, and there's a lot out there. So I don't want us to get caught up in thinking, well, they have to have so many hours of consistent instruction, or it needs to look like this, or we need to have all these check boxes. The minute we do that, they're going to feel very overwhelmed. So we are getting positive feedback about the outline and that it should provide for everything they need to show us that there is continuity of instruction. So I just wanted to put that out there.
May I ask a follow-up?
And then I have one too, Chair. Carol.
Okay. Board Member Davis?
Just a quick follow-up. I just want to know if I'm correct in my understanding that with a dismissal, a soft closure, or a hard closure or complete closure, a school cannot act unilaterally without the health department. Is that correct? To either move into one of those types of closures or to come out of one of those types of closures? Is the understanding accurate?
That's correct. So a school, whether we're using dismissal or soft closure, or even if they changed the term and said no instruction, don't worry about anything, just close the school. There's also, I want to be clear that sometimes meaning school closure can mean nobody's in the building and the doors are locked. So let's just stick with our terminology, which is soft closure or dismissal. That any of that comes from the state health department or a local health department. So in the case of the school who closed a day earlier than anybody else, they first contacted the state health department who referred them to the local health department. They spoke with the local health department and they contacted us, made a board motion. So that is, right now, that is in statute. In some states, the governor has the ability to just close schools. So even though our governor made the motion, he did, or made the declaration, he did so in consultation with the health department.
Thank you.
Chair,
Okay.
this one is Carol. Can I ask a question of
You bet. You
Dr.
bet.
Dixon?
Hold it. Board Member Earl and then Board Member Lear.
Oh, you say who?
So I'm trying to keep track of them here. So Board Member Earl, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess I just want to speak just a little bit to Scott's motion because I think there is a need, and I think our staff, it sounds like they're doing this to make sure that if we're, these continuity plans, that they are working for the local LEA, and that we're not putting so much pressure both on the educators and families to accomplish these things, but also that there's an element of accountability so that if we're in a situation where we're doing online schooling, that there is an accountability factor, but that there is I guess I'm saying that we need to make sure we have a balance in that. And it sounds like staff are working that direction, which I do appreciate. So.
Chair Huntsman, it's Scott again, Jones. Chair Huntsman.
Let me go to Lear and then to you. We're all weighing in on operational kind of stuff, and
Right.
I've got a little bit of a concern because it's taken away a little bit from the motion, but it started with the motion. So
Right.
let me go to Board Member Lear and then to you, Scott.
Board Member Lear, if schools have questions about special education services, which I've heard occasionally, should they direct those directly to Dr. Voorhees? Is there a better way to direct the special ed concerns?
A great question. So if it's a teacher in a school or a parent, make sure they check with their charter or district special education director. We're pushing all the information to them. And what we're also finding is that we're having individual teachers contact us, even though they've contacted their district. They just kind of want the word in case they hear something different from another colleague. So district first, and then up to Dr. Voorhees. She's answering all of those questions.
Thank you. And is it okay to, is she available from her cell phone? Okay.
Cell or email.
Cell or email. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Hanson, back to you.
No, actually, sir, it was me, Scott.
Oh, I thought it was Scott. Okay. Sorry.
But I just wanted to, through you, I just wanted to address Board Member Earl's statement, and then also back to Board Member Hanson. Yes, I mean, we will ensure compliance given the circumstances and situations that we're in right now along those 3 lines, you know. And I say us, I mean, it's not one singular staff member. And then now to Board Member Lear's question, we're answering questions, and I really believe that you'd hear from the field that, you know, we're on top of things as much as we possibly can be, day to day, at minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, as the situation evolves. And even when we get closer to the end of this first 2-week iteration, you know, we'll be able to provide all meaningful guidance and direction that we can from this level. You know, we'll get their plans in, you know, we'll make sure that they have those, and that everyone is maximizing efforts out there to keep education going with the kids, subject to, you know, other changes and events to take place that we just don't know or see right now. I hope that helps, but I do want to emphasize that we are addressing accountability to the fullest extent possible to both Board Member Hanson and Board Member Earl and all board members. Thank you.
And I just want to speak to how this was crafted, and the reason that this all came to be the way it is it's not only from USBE staff, but the education communities, the superintendents and others, in an effort to demonstrate compliance and at the same time do everything that we expect to happen in these times that we're dealing with, trying to make education happen every day. And it's in an effort to be in compliance and to be accountable. This is why this motion is before us, to have the flexibility. If we did not do this and moving forward because of the accountability piece, I just want to reaffirm this piece, or this accountability piece is driving us to do this. We would be having massive layoffs within our education community, and that is absolutely what we're not wanting to do right now. Every LEA is a little bit unique, and they need some flexibility within their plans. It's because, as many of us have said in previous meetings, we're not heavily funded in the past, and some people would say we're just barely operating. And now with these circumstances that are before us, we need every member of the education community doing the very best that they can to make this happen. And so there's a little bit of flexibility, and also addressing these waivers is going to be kind of our new norm, board members, for probably the next couple of months. But people are leaving their hands raised on their computer. This is a note from Brittany here. Does everyone still want to weigh in? So we're going to, if you're not weighing in right now, I've got to restate this motion, and there's some clarity on I think on number 5 that I've got to deal with. So before we do that, I'm still needing to comment if there are people that want to weigh in. Board Member Belknap.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question on this motion of changing the section, and I don't know if Sarah can drop it down a little bit, where we're changing this from Board Member Hanson to saying it's a 2-month, little higher, Sarah, sorry, I meant up. That the following deadlines be pushed back by 2 months. This is my question, my concern. If schools get pushed back even farther for full students entering the school, or if we're pushed back 2 months, are we handcuffing just redoing this again in a few months?
Okay, Angie, do you want to speak to this? I think we are, but
Thank you. This is Angie Stevens. I think what we could do, Board Member Belknap, is if that is the case, the board could come back in either April or their May meeting and do an additional motion. Do you feel good with that?
Good.
And then may I address the one issue related to number 5 and the April 1 deadline for a school to approve their school land trust plan. I did receive some clarification from our school land trust program staff that regardless of the deadline, a submitted plan is required before funding can flow. And the website for plan submissions will be down either in June, all of June and all of July, or all of July and all of August. So their recommendation is that if a school or an LEA would like their school land trust program money to flow at the earliest possible date, that the schools file their plan by May 15th. And if they do it after that, they will get their money at some point. It just may not be at the earliest possible time. So that would be one clarification that our school land trust program staff would provide to districts and charter schools if this change is made to postpone the April 1 deadline for 2 months. Their recommendation would still be, in order for money to flow as early as possible, that LEAs
Was, do you have more questions? I can't. Board Member Davis? You said you have a question?
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, so I'm not, does somebody need me to restate the whole motion again? I'm looking for, I'm gonna raise their hand, or are we still good with the motion that I have on, that I stated that? Okay, so let's vote on them. I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing me read that very long. So we're gonna vote on it. Let's see any discussion. We'll start with Board Member Belknap,
Aye.
Board Member Walter,
Aye.
Board Member Cannon, Board Member Cannon.
Aye, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, you're fine. Vice Chair Cummins,
Aye.
Board Member Davis,
Aye.
Board Member Earl,
Aye.
Board Member Gravitt,
Aye.
Board Member Hanson, is that, I think, Board Member Hanson?
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Haynes,
Aye.
Mark Huntsman's an aye. Board Member Lear,
Aye.
Board Member Marsh,
Aye.
Board Member Thorpe,
Aye. Aye.
Board Member Scott Nielsen, are you on?
Yes, sir. Aye.
Okay, voting was unanimous. Thank you. Next, we'll have under 5.2 is Assistant Superintendent Darren Nielsen ready to give us a brief on this issue before we make a motion.
I'm
We're
planning on
seeing
doing
him.
that, Chair.
Is he? Okay. Assistant Superintendent Darren Nielsen. Want to introduce the
you,
next
Chair.
topic?
Thank you, Chair. I'm assuming you can hear me. Maybe a thumbs up on your end if you can. Okay, thank you. This is really just listening to the last discussion and the consideration of a State Board of Education debating waiving 10 rules that are put in place to provide structure and guidance really is really remarkable, and it speaks to the times that we're in right now. Think about it, it was less than a week ago, we had the state legislature was still in session. We were going to finish that evening. We were able to work in our offices. I was able to go to a movie with my family. I could eat dinner in a restaurant. I could go to church with my neighbors. And since in that very short time period, things have changed foundationally for us, as evidenced by your previous discussion. What I want to talk about today are some of the requirements that are in place that we believe staff should be waived or canceled, or at least considered for such by the Board of Education that are related to federal and state statutes that are not contained within board rules, but beyond the scope of the board's authority. I have an attachment that I've loaded up in the board books for this item that was current as of yesterday morning. It has since, those numbers are no longer current. It identified, excuse me, the number of states that have made decisions or recommendations around state assessment and accountability. At that time, there were 31 states who've either suspended, paused, waived, or canceled testing and are seeking waivers or have taken other actions. As of this morning, that list now is 36. Just in the last 24 hours, 5 additional states have made decisions or determinations, excuse me, about that. 1 more state suspended, paused, or waived testing. 3 more are seeking waivers, and another state is doing a study on the circumstances. We have, as you know, a wide range of assessments that come through the State Board of Education that we have responsibility to oversee. Those include our ACT test, Utah Aspire Plus, a RISE test, as well as a number of others. Some of our testing has been completed for the year. So the WIDA test that we do for English language proficiency, that window closed at the first part of March. And so those tests have all been completed, including makeups, and we're just waiting for scores to come back. Dual language immersion testing is done in the fall. And so this year's testing for dual language immersion, our Apple test, that also has been completed. Some of our other tests are underway or ongoing. The ACT test, for instance, that we administered to all 11th grade students, we have administered approximately 35,000 of those assessments, which leaves another 15,000 or so tests that students that need to access the ACT. The ACT is a wonderful example because it's not only a test that's part of our accountability system, that test contains an actual value to our students who participate in it. Our staff in assessment accountability have been working with each of our vendors to try to mitigate the circumstances that we're in, despite the fact that the ground changes day by day. ACT, for instance, we've been working with them, other states that administer Canvas testing, to open up additional windows of testing that would go later into April. We've also communicated with them about a desire to be able to give our students who couldn't take the ACT a voucher that would allow them to take the test on one of the national test dates in June or July. And so I want to assure you, your staff here are doing the things that were within our power to provide access to these important assessments to our students. However, on the 15th of March, the Center for Disease Control made a recommendation that for the next 8 weeks, organizations limit group gatherings to 50 people or less. Our state hasn't responded to that I'm aware of, but looking forward, it's very likely and becoming more so likely that our students will not be able to gather in groups and be able to actively participate in these assessments. Because of the nature of these assessments that are tied to accountability, it's impossible for us to make them available in an online, unsecure environment. So we've been able to change instructional practices to a virtual setting. These assessments related to accountability at this point we're not able to provide them. It's not just unique to Utah. Across the country, high stakes accountability tests, security is the most, and it's very difficult or impossible for us to deliver them that way. So the recommendation that is before the board is that the board suspend the requirements for schools to administer statewide assessments for 2019 and 20, and direct the superintendent to pursue all related and necessary waivers from the U.S. Department of Education, and also seek to engage with legislators to exempt the board and schools from administering statewide assessments through legislation if necessary. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Questions for Assistant Superintendent Darren Nielsen? Board Member Belknap.
Yes, I'd like to make that motion, please.
Oh, we'd be glad. Do you have that before you? You have the written one before you? I have one that's
Yes,
pre-crafted.
I just thought you're going to have to restate it anyway, so.
Okay, let me,
I,
I'm seeking a motion that the board suspend the requirements for schools to administer statewide assessment for the 2019 and the 2020 school year and direct the superintendent to pursue all related necessary waivers with the U.S. Department of Education and engage with legislators to exempt the board and schools from administering statewide assessment through legislation if needed. Board Member Belknap? Can I get a so moved? Do we have a so moved?
Chair Huntsman, I make that
Yes.
motion. We,
Second?
requirements.
You made that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second, Board Member Bolter.
Did we lose Board Member Belknap?
Board Member Bolter did the second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion to the motion.
Board Member Belknap, does she have?
Board Member Belknap, do you have discussion to the motion? We might have lost her. Can you shoot her a tap? I'm not seeing any discussion to the motion, so we're gonna vote and the motion.
Wait, sorry, Board Member Earl.
Oh,
Nope, she just unraised her hand.
okay. Okay, the motion before the board is that the
Wait, sorry, she's back. Board Member Earl.
Board Member Earl.
I apologize. I'm trying to decide when it is and isn't on. I think this is key, as I've told my district superintendents that I'm for this motion because this helps to free up some of the stresses that teachers and educators are feeling, which is also putting stress on families at this time when they already have a lot going on in their homes. So I think it provides a responsible way to deal with the situation in our state right now. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay. I'll restate the motion and then we'll vote. Hopefully we haven't lost any board members here. The motion before the board is the board suspend the requirements for schools to administer statewide assessment for the 2019 and 2020 school year and direct the superintendent to pursue all related necessary waivers with the U.S. Department of Education and engage with legislators to exempt the board and schools from administering statewide assessments through legislation if needed. Okay, we're gonna vote on that. Hopefully get Laura back on. Board Member Belknap. Board Member Bolter.
Aye.
Board Member Cannon.
Aye.
Board Member Vice Chair Brittany Cummings.
Aye.
Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Board Member Earl.
Aye.
Board Member Gravitt.
Aye.
Board Member Hanson.
Aye.
Board Member Haynes.
Aye.
Mark Huntsman's and I. Board Member Lear.
Aye.
Board Member Marsh.
Aye.
Board Member Scott Nielsen. We might have lost
Oh,
him.
wait, let me check and see. No, try
Um,
him again.
Board Member Scott Nielsen. Board Member Thorpe.
Aye.
Board Member Belknap.
Aye.
Thank you.
Try Board Member Nielsen again.
Board Member Scott Nielsen. We might have lost him. Okay. Voting was unanimous. Motion carries. Can you guys double check your mic? Make sure they're
I got
on.
him off. Just make sure everyone unraises their hand.
Yeah, make sure you unraise your hands when we're done. Okay, thank you.